right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Amanda Bender, the founder of Kilo, and I'm here with Christina Appleton, the founder and CEO of Appleton's Market. Hi, Christina. Good to see
Hi,
you
how are
again.
you doing?
I'm doing okay today. I'm I'm excited that I'm here now and I'm present and I'm talking with you. So,
Agreed.
yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, first and foremost, I just want to start with you telling us a little bit more about your origin story. You shared some of that with me before, but yeah, tell me about the origin of Appleton's Market and also more about you because I think you have a cool
Yeah, yeah, it's all kind of tied together, which is really kind of the brand that I wanted to build. But it was something that was kind of so intrinsic to who I am and how I grew up. So I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and I am a fourth generation grocer. My great grandparents immigrated to Michigan and started a small grocery store, which then got handed down to my grandmother and then handed down to my father. So I grew up basically in the grocery store up until I was 12. We lived in the like apartments above it. So after hours, I would cruise my tricycle through the aisles and I'd build like forts out of paper towels. I'm also an only child, so I had to be like really good at finding my own fun.
background.
I was really good at finding my own fun in the store.
Mhm.
That was, I guess, technically that was my first job was like stocking shelves at like 5 years old. But I knew that I really liked the idea of being my own business owner, but was a little scared of it because all of the things I saw with my parents and kind of the struggles of like you don't really get a vacation and you have to worry about payroll. And so when I went to college, I knew I still really liked food, um, but I knew I wanted to kind of work for a big company and learn what that was about. So I went and worked at General Mills and brand management on kind of those big brands with the like $20 million marketing budgets like Trix and Green Giant and got to do some really cool, fun, sexy stuff. But ultimately, Minnesota wasn't the best fit for me long term. It's a wonderful place, and especially now in the summer, like there's probably not a better place to be on this earth than Minnesota. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's just kind of you have to think about someplace that's also psychographically in line with where you are, and for me, it just wasn't.
Mhm.
And it certainly wasn't for me when I was in my early 20s. So I went
Mhm.
off to business school, and the economy crashed. And I thought about my career and what I wanted out of it. And when you kind of took all opportunity off the table, what opportunity do you actually want? That kind of like, if you didn't have to worry about money, because guess what? No one's really making that much money right now in 2009, 2010.
Mhm.
And so I worked in entertainment for a little bit because it was something I had done in undergrad as an intern and worked as an assistant, kind of like bottom up, snuck my way in through a temp agency and got to do some really cool stuff.
Mhm.
My claim to fame there was I worked at USA, and so I got to, and Meghan Markle's also a Northwestern alum like myself, and so I got to have like a really pretty in-depth conversation with her at an event once, and she was super wonderful and sweet, and so I was like the go-to person for all my friends when all of the like Meghan Harry stuff was in the news. They were always like, "Tell me about it," because I'd had one conversation with her.
Great. You're the best friend.
Best friends, such best friends. But I digress. So I worked in entertainment for a little while at big companies and ultimately realized that big companies didn't care about me. In my second job, I was traveling to 2 or 3 cities a week. I left after 2 years from Fox with 400 fire miles, which were all domestic. And you can imagine the toll that puts on your mind and your body and your spirit. And that just wasn't going to change, regardless of how many PowerPoints I put together saying, like, here was the different ways I'd approach this job. It just, that's what the job was. So I left and jumped into startups. And I worked at a couple kind of health and wellness startups until I got my way to Thrive Market as about the 20th employee there. And it was great. I called it my second business school. I was there for about a year and a half.
Mhm.
The business quintupled. We grew the team from 4 people to 15 on my team, which was all the product stuff. So purchasing, merchandising, private label, all that good stuff.
Mhm.
And after, churning and burning at another startup, I realized like I have to do my own thing. I'm ready now. After, 15 years, basically, I'm ready to start my own thing. So I left there and kind of worked on what's going to be my next idea. I want something that's going to really help people. I don't want another Me Too product. There's some great Me Too products out there, not to denigrate them, but that
Yeah.
wasn't motivating to me.
Mhm.
And and so I was working and helping other people's businesses, helping them with their e-commerce strategy or their marketing or whatever it may be in this better for you space, and found myself personally running from meeting to meeting or call to call, and I'd have maybe 5 minutes that I had to eat something. And I didn't have any brain capacity to come up with what I was going to eat. So it was like, what's nearby? Okay, I've got like this handful of sad almonds at my desk, which that'll fill me up ish. Or I could have an RX bar, which is, again, it'll fill me up and it's decent nutrition, but it's not like yummy. Or I could order Postmates on my phone, wait an hour, spend $30. But like none of those things are what I want. What I
Mhm.
want is something small, quick, and like a small meal. It's fat, it's protein, it's warm, it's tasty, it's fiber and veggies. And there just wasn't anything like that. And so that was my kind of aha moment where I was like, oh gosh, this is my business. Like this idea of a mini meal, this kind of bridge just doesn't exist out there in the market. And so I went in my kitchen and I started chopping and processing and baking and steaming. And I have a great friend who just happens to be a food scientist. And so I worked with her,
Okay.
and we came up with this great product, which is a good source of protein. It gives you your fiber and your veggies and all of that for 100 calories steamed up in the microwave in less than a minute. So
Mhm.
that's how Power Veggie Bites was born. And it's something that was really close to me because it was a product I personally needed and a lot of my friends needed. And those are the people that I found are my strongest brain champions, is like those people who I are in the kind of same age demographic and, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of psychographic group, where we don't want to derail our days when we eat something. We don't want to waste a lot of time thinking about it, but we also don't want to compromise on taste. And so it's kind of hitting us with those things, which I think is actually helping people, which is what I wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, I have so many questions from that. My first comment is I too find that eating there are a lot of options, right? There's bars, I could go grab something at Whole Foods. Used to be the hot food bar, but now it's the cold case as
Yeah.
we're in this crazy time. But for me, what I started to realize more and more as I've gotten older is how much that food is actually a drug, right?
Mhm.
And the things that we eat actually do change not only our blood sugar, but our brain chemistry. And when we have better foods that we can eat to satiate us, it actually can help us be more productive as founders and CEOs and also be more productive creatively and be nicer humans.
Yes.
So for creating that was my comment. But my first question was when you were this little girl, I have quite a wild imagination. I picture you, on this sled trike cruising through the market is what did you imagine or what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh gosh, I went a million different ways. To be completely honest, for a long time, I really wanted to be an actress. That was
Mhm.
like my goal. And I think, frankly, it wasn't so much about acting and pretending as it was about being always the center of attention. Like, I think that really appealed to me. Like in, I think it was fourth grade, we had this when I grew up speech competition. I'm not sure if everybody did. It was sponsored by McDonald's, and it was this big thing. And I think I said I wanted to be a teacher. I don't even know if it's what I actually wanted to do, but you got to pick something. But for
Mhm.
me, it was really about the speech and being in front of everybody and like being part of this competition. And I actually went to like the state finals in this speech competition. And so I think for me, I wasn't like one of those little kids that was like really was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to be a doctor. I want to be whatever. I was all over the place. But I was always very like full of energy and full of like drive to do stuff. Like I said, I started working in my parents' store when I was like 5 years old, where it was like, well, let me use like the checkout gun or let me stock the shelves or whatever it may be. So I think, for better or for worse, that's kind of how, how my career has been too. Like a lot of ambition and not always kind of the straightest line to get there.
Mhm. I wanted to be a cashier at a grocery store.
I mean, that's why everybody loves self-checkout. Come on.
Yes, I loved the idea of the barcode. I was like, "This organization is amazing." I love organization, and there's something quite soothing about scanning a barcode over a laser and it making a beep sound. Don't ask me why, but even my mom to this day will joke, and she's like, "Do you remember for years you wanted to be a market cashier?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I totally remember that." So, not the tangent, but I just wanted that to share that with
It's
you.
a good one. I don't know how it works either. Like having myself created and registered multiple UPCs, and then you go someplace and they generate like an image, and you put that image on your package, and then magically I can take it to Ralph's and scan it and it works. How does that, what, how?
And I could scan one of your bites, right? And I could then, well, I could scan it with a MyFitnessPal app, and then it could tell me the nutritional breakdown, which also is fascinating to me. So I think that's a wonderful reason for barcode too.
They're great.
They are very great. So tell me, Christina, what you find wonderful or beautiful about being a founder.
I love the feeling of charting my own destiny. Um, I think that there's just you can't. I can't. I'll say it that way. I couldn't achieve this feeling when working for other people, because you ultimately have your kind of little box of responsibility. And I use little. It's a little pejorative because when there's been jobs when I had basically like 4 or 5 jobs and it was overwhelming.
Mhm.
But ultimately, the final decision maker was never going to be me, and the final strategy was never going to be mine. So I could say things, I could recommend things, but ultimately, at the end of the day, for better or for worse, it wasn't my butt that was on the line. And there's something that's so great about saying, okay, all those things that bothered me about all those jobs, because every job there's like that one or two things that you're like, if I could only change X, I could only change Y. Well, now I can gather up that whole list of things and I can say, okay, I'm going to build a company that I work with women and minorities and folks who haven't had opportunities, and like that's going to be pretty much all the people I'm going to work with. And I'm going to work with other fellow like my social agency, they've been in business for like a few months. I was one of their first clients because I'm like, I'm here to help these women when they're starting their new business. And that's the kind of business I wanted to run. I want to have a business of transparency. I want to have a business of giving back. And I want to have a business where everyone is heard, and everyone has a seat at the table. And that's something that was important to me in the past. I didn't see it everywhere. So that to me is beautiful. The idea of like we can make our own thing and we can chart our own destiny. Um, Maybe because we have to, which is maybe the flip side, that no one's kind of walking around handing me a CEO job, uh, but like, why not me? Why can't I be the one to do it for myself and create the kind of company that I want? One of my friends I just saw on Facebook, she posted a quote and it really resonated with me, and it was, maybe the change you want to see is you. And I felt that one very deeply, because I think that's what's really great about being an entrepreneur is you can make that happen.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I have a couple things written on a mirror in my living room, and one of them is be the leader I wish I had.
Mm,
And I've had some wonderful leaders throughout my tech career and my career in psychology, and I have had some not great leaders.
mhm,
And when I think about the leader I am and I want to be, I think about the parts that were missing. And I try to teach myself about those things or talk with women like you and learn from you and other wonderful guests we've had on so far about how they think about leadership.
mhm.
What are your, I guess, what are your goals or what do you think is important in terms of leadership? Because I very much think that's a part of staying sane is being a good leader and
Mhm.
understanding how to empower teams and how to also empower ourselves.
Mhm. Definitely. For me, the most important thing is just respect. And I think that that flows in many different ways. The thing that's most salient right now that I've been a big proponent of remote work and work from home and having a decentralized workforce. Ever since I left you have to be in the office, 70 hours a week kind of job. And I had to commute. I live in LA, commutes are horrible. Like getting rid of all of those things, I think is super freeing. And again, not everyone's great at this, but having an environment where you say, listen, you're an adult. I'm not hiring a 7-year old. Like, you know how you work best. You know what you need in your life. And I trust you to do that. And so if you are someone who prefers, I want to get up at 7 a.m. and I want to work till noon, then I want to take a couple hours off and go to the dentist or go get my hair done at 3 p.m. because it's important to me to make sure, in a post-COVID world, like my roots aren't showing, maybe, like, go do that. Like, I'm happy to provide you a job that doesn't interfere with your life. Because at the end of the day, we're not curing cancer here. Like, it's not life or death. And so I want you to do something that's fulfilling and motivating, but also doesn't get in the way of the other things that are fulfilling and motivating in your life. And that to me is incredibly important. And I think that that's one of the things that I didn't see in a lot of leaders. And it is hard. You get like lost in it, certainly when you're under deadline and things are happening. And there are a lot of leaders who, when they are stressed out, they squeeze tighter. And I totally get that. That is a thing that I probably also do. And so just kind of making sure that you're right people, treating them with respect and saying, I'm going to give you all this latitude. And I have some great folks I work with now who, I hired you because you're an expert and I hired you because you're good at this. I'm just going to get out of your way. So yeah, that's my long-winded way of describing what respect means to me.
Yes, and I think it is so important. Something you said is acknowledging the times too, where as a leader, we may squeeze a little bit or we may not necessarily walk the path we want to. And I'm adding this here is like apologize or ask for help or say, I'm stressed right now to the team. I'm sharing this because I have been shared by some people in the last few months that it's not great for a founder to show necessarily any sort of weaknesses. And to me, that isn't real life because we all have days where we feel stressed as founders or we didn't get a good night of sleep or something's happening in our family or a delivery went wrong or something, and I think it's very important for us to have the freedom to say to our team, like, today is like not a great day. I could use some support or encouragement. And if I show you I'm a real human, you too can be a real human in this professional environment. And yeah, so I just think that's so important. And I'm happy that you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people hear like be vulnerable at work or ask for help or acumen as, and I've been in this scenario where you're sitting in a room pitching to VCs and your founder starts crying and you're like, well, this is maybe not the venue to be sharing your feelings. And I think a lot of people go there to this like inappropriate, uncomfortable, out of place thing, but it's like, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, just like you said, it's, hey guys, today's a tough day. Like, I'm going to eat my feelings and have some cookies and just like sit in the corner and be quiet for a little bit. Like, this is what I need. Like, you do what you need to do. I am sorry I snapped at you this morning. Like, I am not me right now. But like you said too, it's all about acknowledging those things and being, again, respectful of people. And I found that early on in my career, I think I did a pretty good job of learning that lesson early of take stock of what you did during the day and like when I was stressed, like how did I react and how did I talk to somebody? And I remember there was one woman, I think she still works in CPG. I worked with her at General Mills and she worked on another team. And I think I was probably not being clear. I was asking her for something and I got like a little curt with her. And I picked, like in the back of my brain, I picked up that she noticed it. And then at the end of the day, 5, 6 o'clock, I was like, you know what? That was not a good impression. That's not like how I should have treated her. And so I walked over to her desk and I apologized. And I think she was very taken aback because that's just people don't do that. 5 hours later, come and apologize to somebody who's not even on their team for something that they said. But it's
Mhm.
so important because we're all humans and we all want to be treated nicely.
And I think being insightful enough to realize, I talked about this actually in the last podcast with Alexander about listening to understand rather than listening to respond. And when you do connect with a person and you realize, oh, my behavior is having this impact on the other person and they're cringing, or you can see that their body language has changed in some sort of way, and you're able to be insightful enough to say, "Oh, shoot, like, I think I did something wrong there. I think I impacted this person in a way I didn't mean to." And being able to go back and apologize, I think, is one of the crucial things about being a good, not only human, but a good leader and a good founder.
Mhm.
Because when you show, I believe when we show our teams and our friends and people we love that we can apologize, it also shows them that they too have the opportunity to make mistakes
Mhm.
and that they're not going to be, you know, chastised because they made a mistake. And that opens up, I think, the possibility for more creativity and teamwork.
Mhm. Definitely.
So then what do you find difficult or ugly about being a founder?
Gosh, well, especially being a solo founder,
Hmm.
and a solo female founder, which is its own special breed. I think like solo female founders, and I'm not raising money right now, but I know the stats. It's like less than 1% go to of VC dollars go to solo female founders. Um, I mean, it's very easy, especially in this time of COVID when we're all so disconnected, to fall into the trap of comparison.
Mhm.
And that's another one of my quotes, is comparison is the thief of joy. And I at least once a day have to remind myself of it,
Mhm.
because it's so easy when you're scrolling through LinkedIn, you're like, oh, well, this company raised $8 million and this company just got, three new accounts, and look at this People Magazine article on this one, and it's so easy to get caught up in that. But then at the end of the day, you have to remember, like, you can't compare your insides to somebody else's outsides. Like, you don't know, that company could be $100,000, $200,000 in the red every month. And so it's great that that's what they're doing, but they have their own problems. Or maybe this company had, $10,000 and or not 10, but like $10 million in the bank, and that's how they're able to do these things. And like, that's just not the business you have right now. And
Mhm.
that's okay. Um, I think that that's tough, and definitely and I wouldn't even say, like, a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome, and it's not even that, because it's I being an only child and being successful in school and all those things has given me a very strong sense of self worth, which really helped me working in startups, because you need to have a strong sense of self worth in those environments. But it's, am I doing the right thing? Like, is this every single choice I'm making, like, is this the right one? Um, because it's just me talking, and I think, putting the $2,000 here, the $5,000 here, or the time and energy here, like, I think that's right, but I don't know. None of us know, and so it's very easy to get down on oneself, as an entrepreneur, because it's all on you. And I mean, I'm lucky in that I don't have a whole big team of people to worry about. I have another friend who, she started a business 5 years ago. They were doing super well. They had 30 employees and $5 million in top line, and then COVID hit, and they were a B2B marketplace business selling to brick and mortar stores. And she had to downsize from 30 people to four in the matter of a few months. And she went dark for like a month where I just didn't hear from her. And she finally came out a couple weeks ago and was like, yeah, it's been a lot of like cookies and crying for the past few
Mhm.
months.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's what entrepreneurship is sometimes. It's cookies and crying. And that's just part of it.
Mhm. And how do you, I mean, two questions, but I'll ask one because sometimes when people ask me two questions, I get confused. Like
Okay.
one question at a time. Uh, how Tell me a little bit more about what imposter syndrome means to you. We hear this term a lot. There's been, I think, TED Talks on it, entrepreneurs talk about it. What does that mean to you?
Um, to me, imposter syndrome means like, am I fooling people? Am I getting this because I've kind of hoodwinked others and then I've kind of convinced them? And the funny thing is, the people who should feel imposter syndrome don't. That's
Right,
what
right.
I felt like. Usually, the people that are the best at hoodwinking people would never question it, and they would think it was all skill and not, you know, charisma. Um, but that's to me like it's I've kind of fooled people, and that's something that's very tough because it's that feeling inherently is in kind of a low self-worth place, and I don't think anybody should hang out there.
Me too. Me too. And I almost, if I had, three wishes from a genie, one of mine would be to get rid of that word. If I were to get rid of kind of three things that are circulating in the tech community for founders, or even, outside of technology for other founders that are starting companies like yourself, the company that you founded is why even put out there that this idea that people would, I like that word, hoodwinked each other, because we're all trying, I think for the most part, most of us are trying to be good humans and to start businesses to help people. You want people to have delicious snacks that make them feel good, and you put your love into it. And so, why would we even spend any time thinking we would be imposters? But I do think it also happens more with women founders because I've thought of that for myself as well. Like, I'm a sole female founder of a company for men. And there have been some times where I'm like, wait, what? And then I go, but this is the idea I caught. So I have to run with it. My second question is, when you're trying to decide what's right as a sole founder, how do you do that? And how do you just find your compass there?
It's a great question. I think the upside of this COVID world is that everybody is online and everybody's on these like connectivity tools, whether it be Slack channels or Facebook groups or whatever it may be. Like, I don't know if it just coincided that I launched my business during the pandemic and all these things came online during the pandemic, or these things already existed and it's just because now I'm a sole founder, now I'm finding these things. Um, but I've kind of created a community on these different channels. And I joked with a friend a few days ago because we're in lockdown here in LA. I'm like, I'm making friends on Slack now because there's no other place to make friends. And so, like, there's a founder of a great spice company, this guy based in Brooklyn. And I'm like, I'm friends with him now. We've had like numerous conversations. We talk on Slack a lot. Like, he's my friend. And I've never met him in person and probably never will. But that for me, like creating those communities and then having people to bounce things off of. So it's whether it be, hey guys, like, what do you do? Do you use freelancers, do agencies? Do you do it on your own and just say, whatever, we'll sort it out? And I think it's also important in those communities to have folks above and below you, because it's great to get feedback from people who have already been there. But then when you are trying to help people who are even kind of less along the journey than you are and you're kind of explaining your rationale for why you did things, it helps you to kind of double check all of your own assumptions when you're relaying them to somebody else and saying, oh, actually, is this advice I'd give somebody else? Like, was this the right thing, or is this? And it's and those things that you still believe in steadfastly, you're like, oh, that was the right choice. Like, I still feel strongly that that's the right choice. And so that's been super helpful for me. And I'm very grateful for, the team at Slack for making that happen for us, for all the folks who have really worked, the admins in the different groups I'm in on Facebook, to really create these communities of supportiveness and openness and honesty. And I think that's also kind of been something in the food industry. Like, it's always been a very helpful, open industry. But I think like the pandemic has really magnified that.
I too believe communities are extremely important. So I felt so happy when you said that, and I feel so happy about you talking about that. A friend of mine a couple months ago sent me an article. I believe it was a gentleman who gave a talk at, is it West Point that's in Annapolis?
The Naval Academy.
The Naval Academy, yes, I believe it's the Naval Academy. I'll link the article in the show notes, but he was talking about how when we have conversations with friends or peers or mentors, when we actually say these things out loud that are bumping around in our brain, we not only learn about ourselves because we're articulating our opinions and our thoughts and we're iterating on who we are in the moment, we get an opportunity to show someone else who we are.
Mhm.
And in turn, they get to do the same. And it has been hard during COVID because it's more difficult to have in person conversations. But you and I met through an online
Yeah.
community. And talking with you the first time too, I started to understand some more about myself as a female sole founder. And so thank you for that. And I just really want to just plus 1,000 to community and talking to people because loneliness is a real thing for humans. And sometimes we often forget that community is one of the number one solutions to staying sane and staving off loneliness.
Definitely.
Do you have other things you do more days than not to help you with your mental wellness?
Yes, and it's definitely apparent. So I randomly, normally exercise is something that I do, whether it's going for a walk or on the weekends, it's like playing tennis for a few hours or going hiking. My habits have been obviously curtailed by COVID, but like getting and moving and for me anyway, when I'm doing those things, I turn my brain off and I am just focusing on the what is right in front of my face. And that has been a really good break and release for me. And it's been extra apparent because 5 weeks ago, I actually tore my calf muscle, like,
Mm, mhm.
which I didn't know that was a thing. Apparently, once you hit 35, everything just starts to break. And I learned that if you are, a runner, sprinter, tennis is where you're running and sprinting, and you are fatigued. So it was in minute 90 of me playing, and it was hot outside, and yeah, my calf muscle just tore, and it was horrible. I felt this like I felt a pop, which is also not a thing I knew could happen.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I was gimping around for like weeks, and
Mm.
I have a great physical therapist, and she's helped me, and I've now been cleared to play for the first time again this weekend. But like the feeling that I mean, I couldn't even walk properly for a few weeks.
Mhm.
Never mind like actually exercise. And the first time I was able to run last weekend and like actually get a sweat up and then come and do my PT exercises, and then that shower feeling that you get like after you've worked out and you're gross and you're sweaty, and then you take that cold shower and you feel so good, like those endorphins I just haven't felt for weeks. And gosh, it felt great. And it definitely helps me just calm me down, center me. I don't feel like eating my feelings as much from getting my serotonin from those areas.
Mm.
So that's been a big help to me, especially in the pandemic, where my normal things like meeting up with friends for happy hour or all of those have been taken away. So that's one that's easy to do, and you can go for a run by yourself. It doesn't really need to involve too much planning or other people, but for me, really helps.
Mhm. Me too. I'm a huge proponent of exercise, and more days than not, I try to walk.
Mhm.
And I take myself to a local coffee shop and say hi to the awesome humans that work
Mhm.
there. And then I walk home. And what I've also appreciated during this time is that I get to see the city change. So, new architecture, uh, people who also walk during the same time, and how the city is changing during this time is also something that keeps me very present in the moment and helps me stay sane instead of getting too far in the future. It's like, okay, right now I'm walking. Oh, look, things are changing slowly. There is constant movement. Like just get one thing done at a time and
Mhm.
and you'll
Mhm.
you'll start to move closer and closer to your goals. So before we end with a new game idea that I had that we're going to try out together, I like to ask this question. How often do you think about mortality, and does it at all influence your life and what you want to get done?
I mean, I love this question because no one ever asks about this stuff. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's terrifying. It's funny. My partner and I joke. So I am terrified of death. I will, you know, screaming, clawing into the night is how I'm gonna go. Like I'm like, I will be a vegetable with no head. Keep me alive. Like I'm like, somebody will figure out a cure for it. Like I have faith in science and people, and like I being on this planet is a gift, and I and we are here for a fraction of a second. When you think about the time of the universe and like that, we are so lucky to be here, and everything from like when I tore my calf I couldn't work, like I'm so lucky to have a body that works and that I can do things with, um and that we have all these great things, and there, I mean, cookies and puppies and like all this just amazing things that we are able to experience here on this earth. um so I do occasionally get my my kind of just white knuckled fear of like, crap, like it could all be snuffed out tomorrow. Like you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. And so and my partner is not at all afraid of anything. And so he's like, whatever, we'll all die someday. But ironically, he is the one that is obsessed with saving for retirement. Just
Mhm.
every 3 days he talks about his retirement account and what the market is doing and what's happening and how we're going to have money when we retire. And it's funny because like I plan on living to be 100, but I'm also cognizant of like I have no control over that. So, or not no control, I have little control over that. It's mostly genetics and environment and other things. I probably have control over 5 or 10 years of it, which I do my best to optimize for those 5 or 10 years. But I'm very much in a like, this time we need to be doing everything we can. So when I left Thrive, I wasn't making any income. It was, you know, a busy time. It was in the fall for my boyfriend, but I was like, you know what? This is one of the times in my life when I have nothing lined up. Like I have no responsibilities right now. We're going to Africa. Like it's something that we'd always talked about. Like maybe someday we'll go, and like maybe our honeymoon. I was like, you know, no, let's go now because we don't know what's going to happen now. COVID. I mean, I couldn't have foretold this, but like you can't go anywhere. But I was
Mhm.
like, I've always wanted to go on safari. I'm obsessed with like Africa and animals and conservation, and like let's do it. Um, and I think that that sometimes does those types of things of like, why not now, um, have definitely cropped up more the older I get, and the more I kind of think about like, shoot, I could be coming up on the halfway point of my life, and like, what have I done, and like, what are all the things I wanted to do, and like, have I really been pushing myself to do them, or has it been a like, well, someday we'll do that, because you, again, you have no control over Sunday. You have control over today, and I think that I think it's important to remember without dwelling too much on the ticking clock that we all have.
Yeah. I'm very happy you like that question. Though you said you don't think about it too much and are scared by it, because I think for me, when something scares me, I try to go towards it and not have a ton of expectations on how it's going to work out. And I recently read this quote. I'm reading a book called The Pocket Samurai because it very much influences Kilo's brand, but I can't remember the quote word for word, but it talks about like being aware of mortality will help us be kinder in our words and our actions towards each other because we're more aware that, like you said, like tomorrow could be the day when our life is snuffed out. Hopefully not, but to think about that and realize that every day is a gift. And I know that sounds so cliche and cheesy, but I'm cliched and cheesy sometimes, is that it's so important to tell people, when you feel happy when you see them or when you feel sad or how they impact you. And yeah, I'm just thankful that you appreciate that question.
I do. And what you said about appreciating people, I try to remember usually about once a quarter. I'll go through my phone and my messages and just message like the last 50 people that I have text with and say like sending hugs, I appreciate you or something like that. Because no one, or I love sending physical paper cards because no one's upset. No one's ever irritated or weirded out or whatever when you tell them you appreciate them or you show them you appreciate them. Like everyone likes that. And yeah, you're supplanting yourself by doing that, but like, so what? Like, put some positivity out in the world.
I love that. Put positivity out into the world. How can people find you?
People can find me, well, they can find my business first. It's appletonsmarket.com. Or they can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We're just at Appleton's Market. I'm Christina Appleton. So I'm Christina and I'm social. I'm actually like not super prolific, but you can follow my dog. She is Chloe Bear Palm on Instagram, and she is actually a paid spokesmodel. She is on the front of Hill's Science Diet dog food right now. So that is my proud parent plug at the end. But yeah, would love to chat with everybody. I'm always here to be a resource for anybody who is interested in food or entrepreneurship or if it makes sense to get an MBA, because I have a lot of thoughts on that. So feel free to reach out and ask any questions.
Yes, you didn't mention that. Christina has an MBA. Smart lady. All right, everyone. Thank you, wonderful humans. We'll see you next time, and mahalo. Thank you again for watching. I want to do a couple quick shout outs. I want to shout out Startup Hut, who's working with Kilo to develop and produce this podcast. Startup Hut dedicates itself to democratizing access and eliminating geographical barriers to a diverse community of like-minded founders, mentors, and investors dedicated to building successful startups. They organize live stream virtual pitch events and are building an online community of entrepreneurs that can leverage a network of investors, mentors, and partners and access community perks and resources. So check them out. And if you're interested in pitching at one of their future pitch events, I was actually one of their first. It was really wonderful. Or partnering with Startup Hut, please contact George at thestartuphut.com for more info. And you can find me or Kilo on your pocket computer or larger computer at www.kilo.app. We are building better humans by building an app for men to track and learn from qualitative data in order to be mentally happier and healthier. You can also find us on IG at kilo.app. So be well. Bye for now, wonderful humans. Thanks again. Mahalo.